What's up, guys? Today is Thursday, May the 28th, and this is reading class. Today we're going to go over chapter 11 of the Giver. And last week, when Jonas goes to meet the Giver, he gets his first memory at the very end of the chapter. He finds out that there are things that he never knew existed. One of those things was snow. Another thing was downhill sledding. So that's why last week's question was, how do you think he's going to respond to downhill sledding? Because there's something he's never experienced before. So maybe a little bit of fear, but also a lot of excitement. Maybe it's sort of similar to like going on a roller coaster or something for the first time. You're just not quite sure what to expect. So that's what I would think Jonah would, or how I think he would respond when he gets transferred that memory. So yeah, that's the main thing. He just goes and meets him and gets his first memory, and now they're going to go into that memory. All right, so here we go, chapter 11. All right. Jonas felt nothing unusual at first. He felt only the light touch of the old man's hands on his back. He tried to relax, to breathe evenly. The room was absolutely silent, and for a moment, Jonas feared that he might disgrace himself somehow on the first day of his training by falling asleep. Then he shivered. He realized that the touch of the hands felt suddenly cold. At the same instant, breathing in, he felt the air change, and his breath felt very cold. He licked his lips, and in doing so, his tongue touched suddenly chilled air. It was very startling, but he was not at all frightened now. He was filled with energy, and he breathed again, feeling the sharp intake of the frigid air. Now, too, he could feel the cold air swirling around his entire body. He felt it blow against his hands where they lay on his sides and over his back. The touch of the man's hands seemed to have disappeared. Now he became aware of an entirely new sensation. Pinpricks? No, because they were soft and without pain. Tiny cold feather-like feelings peppered his body and face. He put out his tongue and caught one of the dots of the cold upon it. It disappeared from the awareness instantly, but he caught another and then another. This sensation made him smile. One part of his consciousness knew that he was still lying there on the bed in the annex room. Yet another, separate part of his being was now upright in a sitting position and breathing, and beneath him he could feel that it was not the soft decorated bed covering at all, but rather it seemed to be a flat, hard surface. His hands now held, though at some time they were still motionless at his sides, a rough, damp rope. And he could see through his eyes, he could see though his eyes were closed. He could see light, whirling torrent of crystals in the air around him, and he could see them gather on the backs of his hands like cold fur. And his breath, it was visible. Beyond, though, the swirl of what he now somehow perceived was the thing the old man had spoken of, snow. He could look down at the great distance. He could look out and down at the great distance. He was high at some place. The ground was thick with furry snow, but he sat slightly above it on a hard, flat object. Sled, he knew abruptly. He was sitting on the thing called a sled, and the sled itself seemed to be poised at the top of a long, extended mound that rose from the very land where he was. Even though he thought the word mound, his new consciousness told him it was a hill. Then the sled, with Jonas upon it, began to move through the snowfall, and he understood instantly now that he was going downhill. No voice made an explanation. The experience explained it to him. His face cut through the frigid air as he began to descend, moving through the substance called snow on the vehicle sled, which propelled itself on what he knew to be, no doubt, as being runners. What he knew without no doubt to be runners. Comprehending all of those things as he sped downward, he was free to enjoy the breathless glee that overwhelmed him, the speed, the cold air, the total silence, and the feeling of being balanced, and excitement and peace. Then, the angle of the incline lessened as the mound, the hill, flattened, nearing the bottom. The sled's forward motion began to slow. The snow was piled now around it, and he pushed it with his body, moving forward, not wanting the exhilarating ride to end. Finally, the obstruction of the piled snow was too much for the thin runners in the sled, and he came to a complete stop. He sat there for a moment, panting, holding the rope with his cold hands. Tentatively, he opened his eyes. Not his snow hill sled eyes, for they had been open throughout the entire strange ride. He opened his ordinary eyes, and he saw that he was still on the bed, that he had not actually moved at all. The old man still sat behind him, watching him. "How do you feel?" he asked. Jonas sat up and tried to answer honestly. Surprised, he said, after a moment. The old man wiped his forehead with his sleeve. "Whew," he said. "It was exhausting, but even transmitting that tiny memory to you, I think it lightened me just a little." Do you mean you did say I could ask questions?" The man nodded, encouraging a question. "Do you mean that now that you have the memory of it, do you mean that now that you don't have the memory of it, of that ride on the slide anymore?" "That's right. A little bit of that weight is gone from my body." "But it was so much fun, and now you don't have it anymore. I took it from you." But the old man laughed. "All I gave you was one ride on one sled in one snow on one hill. I have a whole world of memories. I could give you them all one by one or 1,000 times, and there would still be more." "Are you saying that we could do it again?" Jonas asked. "I really liked it. I think I could steer by pulling the rope. I didn't try this time because it was so new to me." The old man, laughing, shook his head. "Maybe another day for a treat, but there's no time, really, just to play. I only wanted to begin showing you how it works. Now," he said businesslike, "lie back down. I want to," and Jonas did. He was eager for whatever experience might come next. But he had suddenly so many questions. "Why don't we have snow or sleds or hills?" he asked. "And when we did we have it in the past? Did my parents have sleds when they were young? How about you? Did you have sleds?" The old man shrugged and gave a short laugh. "No," he told Jonas. It was a very distant memory. That's why it's so exhausting. I have to tug it forward from many generations back, and it was given to me when I was a new receiver. And the previous receiver had to pull it through his long time period as well. But what happened to those things? Snow and all the rest of it? Well, there's now climate control. Snow made growing food difficult, limited the agricultural periods, and unpredictable weather made transportation almost impossible at times. It wasn't a practical thing, so it became obsolete when we went into the sameness. And the hills too, he added. They made conveyance of goods unwieldy. Trucks and buses slowed them down. So he waved his hand, as if the gesture had caused the hills to disappear. Sameness, he concluded. Jonas frowned. "I wish we had those things still, just now and then." The old man smiled. "So do I. But that is not a choice that is ours." "But sir," Jonas suggested, "since you have so much power," the man corrected him. "Honor," he said firmly. "I have a great honor, as will you. But you will find that power and honor are not the same. Lie quietly down. Since we've entered into the topic of climate, let me give you something else. And this time I'm not going to tell you the name of it because I want it to test the receiving. You should be able to perceive the name of it without having to be told. I gave away snow and sled and downhills and runners by telling you their names in advance. Without being instructed, Jonas closed his eyes again, and he felt the hands on his back again, and he waited. Now it came more quickly, the feelings. This time the hands didn't become cold, but instead began to feel warm to his body. They moistened a little, and the warmth spread, extending across his shoulders, up his neck, and onto the side of his face. He could feel through his clothed parts, too, a pleasant overall sensation when he licked his lips this time. They were hot, and they felt heavy. He didn't move. There was no sled. His posture didn't change. He simply was alone someplace, out of doors, lying down in the warmth that came from above. It was not as exciting as the ride in the snowy air, but it was pleasurable and comforting. Suddenly he perceived the word. It was sunshine. He perceived that it came from the sky, and then it ended. Sunshine, he said out loud, opening his eyes. Good, you did get a word. That makes my job easier without so much explaining. And it did come from the sky, that's right, the old man said, just the way it used to before the sameness, before there was climate control, Jonas added. The man laughed. You receive well, and you learn quickly, and I am pleased with you. That's enough for today, I think. We're off to a good start. There was a question that was bothering Jonas. Sir, he said, the chief elder told me, she told everyone, and you told me too, that it was going to be painful. So I was a little scared, but it didn't hurt at all. I actually enjoyed it. He looked quizzically at the old man. The man sighed. I started you with memories of pleasure. He took a few deep breaths. Jonas, he said, it will be painful. But it's not going to be painful yet. I'm brave. I really am. Jonas sat up a little straighter. The old man looked at him for a moment and smiled. I can see that, he said. Well, since you asked the question, I think I have enough energy for one more transmission today. Lie down once more. This will be the last today. Jonas obeyed cheerfully. His eyes closed, waiting, and he felt the hands again, and he felt the warmth again, the sunshine again, coming from the sky of the other consciousness that he knew was so new to him. This time, he lay basking in a wonderful warmth. He felt the passage of time. His real self was aware that it was only a minute or two, but his other self, his memory-receiving self, felt hours and hours of time pass in the sun. Bending it, he felt the sharp pain in the crease of his inner arm and elbow. Ouch, he said loudly, and he shifted in bed. Ow, he said, wincing at the shift, and even moving his mouth to speak the word because his face hurt. He knew that there was a word, but the pain kept him from grasping it. Then it ended. His eyes opened, wincing in discomfort. It hurt, he told the man. I couldn't get it out for a minute. The word was sunburn, he told him. And it hurt a lot, Jonas said. But I'm glad you gave it to me. It was very interesting. Now I understand better what it meant, that there would be some pain. The man didn't respond. He sat silently for a second. Finally, he said, get up now. It's time for you to go home. They both walked to the center of the room. Jonas put the tunic back on. Goodbye, sir, he said. Thank you for my first day. The old man nodded to him. He looked drained and a little sad. Sir, Jonas said shyly, do you have a question? It's just that I don't know your name. I thought you were the receiver, but you said that I'm now the receiver, so I don't know what to call you. The man sat back down in the comfortable upholstered chair. He moved his shoulders around as if to ease the aching sensation. He seemed terribly weary. Call me the Giver, he told Jonas. All right, that is the end of the chapter. All right, so, Jonas got some new memories, memories of sunshine and sunburn, and he decided that, or realized that he should call the old receiver, she should call him the Giver now, because Jonas is the receiver and the old man is the Giver. All right, which matches up, of course, with our book. All right, so, that's the main takeaway from that chapter, is that he is learning all these new sensations, pain and sunshine and warmth and cold. Go ahead and make sure that you rewatch this if you need to and take some notes so that you can answer the critical thinking questions for tomorrow. All right, guys. Have a good day.